Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and for the match day post-match bulletin, I'm joined by Anthony Haggerty and Lawrence Connolly. We're looking back on a 1-1 draw at home to Dundee United, who I think are going to have to take a lot of credit for what would have probably been an entertaining game for a neutral, Tony, but a very frustrating afternoon for a Celtic supporter to watch.
Yeah, frustrating in the sense that they had the woodwork a few times and could have won the game, but they didn't. And we said at the top of the bulletin when we came on before the game, it was a must-win game.
Yeah.
They haven't won it. And now they're, 6 points behind Rangers and, 3 or 4 points behind Motherwell and Hibs. Is that right?
Hibs and Hearts are on 15 now, Tony, so they're a point off the pace, both unbeaten. Motherwell are on 14, Celtic on 10, but Dundee United, of course, are still sitting 5th on 11. So you think about Aberdeen, who are 2 points behind us, and they're having a shocker of a season. They're only 2 points behind us.
Well, Celtic have taken, 10 points from the opening 7 games?
Yes.
Which is now less than 50%.
Yep.
So the statistics and the league table don't lie. I think it's fair to say that the honeymoon period is over after today. I think, is that a fair comment? You know, and I know they did maybe enough to win the game, but they didn't win the game. So
this is the point. This is the point. So after Livingston, we ran a bulletin on the Monday, Tony, which you were part of, and it asked the question, when do we speak about Ange? That's all it said. When do we speak about Ange? And we were criticised heavily in some quarters for even questioning the role played by the manager because of things like, yes, but he's suffering from so many injuries. And by the way, it's a valid point. There's another 2 injuries today, which forced his hand on 2 occasions to make substitutions. Or, but we could have won that game had we not hit the bar 3 times. But see, by the end of the season, you'll just have a plethora of buts and no league title to show for it.
Listen, United should have scored at the end.
Yeah.
They should have made it 2-1. You know, so as much as we've hit a bar, they should have made it 2-1 at the end.
But that's the thing. You could, for the Fuchs challenge, Lawrence, you could counter that by saying, well, United should have had a penalty in the first half. So, absolutely. It could go both ways. I do find it a wee bit harsh to go through Ange when it comes to options. I mean, there was a point at 65 minutes, Lawrence, and you and I are sitting, and it was pretty evenly matched. At that point, you could have gone either way in terms of a winner at 65 minutes. And it's at that point that you think, right, we need a change. And you and I were discussing what could have been done. And it was very similar to the game against Livingston. Very, very few, if any, options on the bench. And I do have my sympathies for Ange, but we're in a situation by the time Jamesy Forrest and Callum McGregor and Kyogo and Julien and everybody else comes back, we could be so far off the pace that it's an unsurmountable gap. And that's my biggest concern.
Listen, there was options. I mean, straight away, we'll want to change them. Go 3-5-2. Get Welsh on. Go 3-5-2. Get a Bada and a Yeti up front. There was a way to change it. Clearly, it wasn't happening for Wojcik and Turnbull today. Get Turnbull off. Ralston could play right wing back. Montgomery left wing back. You ought to just behind.
It wasn't happening for a Yeti either, Lawrence, so you just taking him off.
Well, but I'm thinking going 3-5-2, keep the forwards on the park. But there was changes that could have been made, but there weren't. There was no changes.
If you're going to go 3-5-2, I would have put Jota and Abada up front then.
Let's have a wee chat then about a Yeti, Tony, because it's got to that stage. I mean, obviously there was the blatant chance where he's fired it over the bar, but I count 3 very good opportunities. It might be harsh to say he should have scored all 3. 2 headers where he simply can't get above the ball. One from a cross by Ralston, one from Abada. But again, does that not say more about his positioning? I keep hearing he's a box goal scorer, a penalty box goal scorer, but he's been given 3 penalty box opportunities today and he's not scored any of them.
And also as well, how many times did we fizz the ball across the area and he's nowhere near them?
Montgomery, particularly, what a chance that was.
He's moving our anticipation. We're in the group chat and there was messages coming in and Laura made the point on the group chat that he just doesn't anticipate, he doesn't run. How many times can a ball be crossed into the box and your centre forward's no there? And I have to agree with that. You know, that's. I mean, we're watching the same game.
Mhm.
You know, your centre forward should be there, and then when he is on the end of chances that you think he should score, he's fluffing. I said to you at half time, didn't I? I hope that didn't turn out to be a big moment in the game, and it has turned out to be a huge moment in the game.
Yeah,
because that's a bread and butter tap in for a goal, and he skies it. I mean, he misses by.
you've got to score.
I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, and it was right after United had scored.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was crucial.
Sucker punch for Dundee United, who, by the way, I think throughout the game showed themselves as being one of the best teams we've seen, if not the best team we've seen at Celtic Park, certainly this season, Lawrence. I mean, they'll be fine this season, Dundee United. A couple of very, very good performances in there.
Yeah, but listen, Hearts and midfield looked really good. Fuchs, although he's been off, you know, the rest of the game he competed well. But for me, Roger and Turnbull were again missing in midfield. McCarthy was good when he was on. Thought Sorrell done okay. But we can't have three players in midfield and only get a tune out of one of them. You know.
There was maybe a spell about 10 minutes where Rogic came back into the game, and it was just before then, Lawrence, you and I were saying that if you're going to make a change, it's got to be Rogic off, because he had basically just been on the periphery of the match all the way through it, not contributing whatsoever. Then there was a wee flurry. There was an opportunity. He's in the box. He does his mazy run. Nothing comes of it, of course. He hits the bar with a header. And, it's frustrating because we know that, historically, Rogic and Turnbull aren't going to be playing 2 games in 90 minutes every week, but we're expecting them to do that just now. Is it maybe a situation, Tony, where, they're just running out of steam at the moment?
Yeah, but we keep getting back to it, don't we? Our chronic lack of depth. Mm-hmm. And we've spoken about it for weeks of the transfer window, and then since the transfer window shut, we knew we were light in midfield. We just knew it, and we did nothing about it. You let a potential target in Ali McCann from St Johnstone go to Wigan for 1.2 million. Could have signed him. A potential target, possibly Lewis Ferguson from Aberdeen, didn't even inquire about it. These players are available or were available. And injuries are part and parcel of football. Your captain gets injured, and it takes away a massive, massive part of your team. And we're not pinning this on Ange, but Ange is the football manager of Celtic Football Club, and Ange's job is to get results for Celtic Football Club. There you go, capital mark. That's what I'm saying. 10 from 21 points, mm-hmm. Not way acceptable. But these are the stats. These are the facts. And yep, we're allowing for injuries and all sorts of things, and he's been dealt a terrible hand so far. But he has to come up with ways of winning football matches, and so far he hasn't. When people were saying Abbott at home were pretty good, we're looking at Abbott, as you've said. There's no Abbotts today.
No.
They did not win a football match that was already 7 games into the season was a must-win game. Because, as you say, come the time all these players come back and they're fit and ready and report for duty, Celtic might be well out of it, but then that gap might have been stretched to more. And that's your fear now moving forward.
Absolutely. Lawrence, you were going to chip in there.
I was going to say last game at home we were struggling until we get a fortunate deflection for Carter Vickers. The first 2 games I would say we were looking good.
I was given the game to put it out in that one.
But the worry here is there was changes that could have been made.
I raised that point against Livingston, Lawrence, and quite a few people disagreed, because to go offensive, people often think you need to bring on an attacking player, but I just think that you need to know your side and your squad well enough to be able to, because you can't go into a game like today, 65 minutes in, 1 each, not create enough, and not be able to change it. You've got to be able to change it. There's bodies on the bench, and if they're on the bench, they're good enough to play for Celtic. Therefore, you've got to make the changes. So you've got to change the shape. I mean, you gave one suggestion of that for Albion Ajeti, regardless of whether or not there's an out-and-out striker, centre forward on that bench. For him to complete the game today and play 94 minutes is a scandal. There's no way that he would do any more than bringing somebody else in off the bench and putting maybe a Bada, because I don't think Jota looked tremendously natural to that position when he came on, when he switched against Wraith Rovers. So give Abada a more prominent role through the middle. But you've got to bring Ayeti off, Tony. You can't just hope that he's going to turn the tide in 90 minutes.
I would have thought so. You know, if you're looking at the bench, you're taking 3 players off, 3 players immediately spring to mind. It's Rogic, Turnbull or Ayeti, right? If you're looking to your bench, so you're making changes accordingly, aren't you? You know, McCarthy had to come off because he was injured. But if I'm Andrew, I'm thinking, okay, you bring Moffat on, you know, take Ayeti off, put Abada through the middle, put Moffat out wide, and Jota out wide, you know, and or whatever. But regardless, as you say, options might be limited, but you still have options. You should have the managerial nous to be able to change that game.
Mm-hmm.
And we've watched 3 situations now where we've been in a comfortable winning position in Spain, and the manager has not known how to win that football match, or at least get a draw. Lost 4-3. We've gone to Livingston and lost an early-ish goal, and we've not been able to get a point from that.
Yeah.
Let alone, you know, we're not being able to score a goal, right? And then we've took another winning position at home today, where we're supposed to be brilliant, and we've not been able to change it or turn that draw into a win. These things worry me, and they worry me about the manager. And you know, and you're not being, as I keep saying, you're not being wise after the event. You've been signposting it along the way and just saying, look, don't get carried away. It's, you know, we'll see what happens where we are. And people say, you know, once we got all these players back, and I get all that, but it might be too late by then. You have to adapt to the here and now. And in the here and now at the top of the programme, we said on the 7th game in the campaign, it was a must-win. Nothing changed, and Celtic didn't win it. So, as you say, when do you start turning around and say, there's cause for concern? Because I'm concerned, very concerned. Yeah. And I'm concerned, and we've cut the manager every bit of slack going. Did you see much evidence, and I hate the phrase Ange Ball, so I'm not going to call it Ange Ball, but did you see much evidence of this great attacking football today?
I think what you see Jota standing out like a sore thumb.
Yep.
Who I think that, you know, even if you want him to play in a specific role, he's going to stand out because of the God-gifted talent that he possesses, Tony. But beyond that, I've not seen anything that would... in fact, what I would go as far as to say is I've seen far too much at the back to suggest that it's not actually working. There was a moment where Joe Hart ended up, right, and he couldn't have been aware of everything that was happening at that, because he's turned around and played the ball across his own goal. Hearts in the mouth stuff. That's happened too often for me. So if that's part of the philosophy, then it concerns me greatly as well.
I said also on Monday that, though, as much as I didn't see Ange Ball, I saw a lot of dodgeball. There's people no ducking out of responsibility here, no taking responsibility for grabbing that game by the scruff of the neck and going and winning it. That's what it would have needed today. You know,
there was one point second half, Turnbull's got his arms out like that, but there's a player between him and a Celtic boy with a ball. You're like, Turnbull, you need to show for this. You need to move. You need to let the boy see you. You need to make the angle here. You need to take a few steps instead of just going, you're not giving me the ball. You're like, you can't get the ball to you. You need to move for it. So, but you touched on it, you know, 3 players you never thought, one of them would maybe lucky if one of them finishes the game. Turnbull, Rogic, Ayeti. And all 3 finished.
All 3 of them get the full 94 minutes.
And Jota, as you say, was the only one that looked capable of winning it, and as if he wanted to win it.
I would give Tony Ralston, mate. 94 minutes, he's still going up and down that line.
Well, there's a good point. There's a good point that Duncan Cameron makes on that, Lawrence. You're chatting on the YouTube comment section, Duncan. Thanks for getting involved. And you say that Ralston leaves everything on the park. If Turnbull had half his heart, he'd be twice the player. I'll tell you one thing, and I know that Ralston has divided opinion throughout the season, Tony Haggerty, but he is committed. He's 100%, and he was still winning corners in the last 5 minutes of that game.
Yeah. Okay, I was kind of meaning in the creative sense. You know, I accept now that Tony Ralston gives his all for the club, and he's not let anybody down this season since he's came into the side. It's kind of a given now. that Ralston's a 7/8 player, and I never ever thought I'd say that. So I was kind of exempting the guys from the back because I think they actually did a bit today, you know. From forward to front, we had one player functioning, and that was Jota.
Now, here's the thing. I'm going to throw this out to you guys because, again, I think if someone like, let's say, Jim Orr was on today's post-match, he would be saying, margins, we've hit the bar on 3 occasions, we've had 2 injuries, you know, sustained in the first half, which forced a change in the first half and a change at half-time. And the way that Jim looks at it is very much balanced. There's no knee-jerk when it comes to that viewpoint. And I absolutely get all that. But the stark reality is we're sitting here with 3 defeats and a draw already from the first 7 games. And if we continue in that vein of form, I'm not going to be so brutal as to suggest we won't even finish second. But I'm going to bring this up. D. Kelleher says we're going to be lucky to make the top 6. What I'll say is that you've got teams in Hearts and Hibs who, for many, many years, I feel have been underachieving. I've always felt that a team from the capital should be much, much stronger than they have been. Every so often, there's a cup run, or every so often, they go on a run of games. I remember the Hearts team, Tony, that I think went for the first 12 games of the season under Burley, and they're sitting at the top of the league. And that happens from time to time. But you're looking at them after 7 games, and I know it's only 7 games, but they've got the points on the board. They're unbeaten, and they're building something, whereas I still think we're in a state of flux. I'm still waiting for this philosophy and this style of football to click. It's been very much sporadic. Sometimes we get a great performance. Sometimes we get a great 30 minutes. But the game plan, for me, I don't think is as clear as it is when you watch Hibs or Hearts or Rangers. And by the way, Motherwell and Dundee United are above us as well. And I've watched Celtic teams that have finished 5th in the league, by the way, D. Kelleher. So I don't take what you're saying lightly at all, because you've got to go out there and get results like today, Tony. Now, there's been a lot of chat around about the Celtic kind of alternative media sphere that when you criticise the club, you're called negative. I'm not being negative. I mean, I'll sit here all day and talk about the positives from today. Jota being the biggest positive. Ralston on the right-hand side, fantastic. I thought Montgomery, under the circumstances, thrown in unexpectedly, did really well once again. The negatives, the only negatives for me, if I'm going to talk about negatives, is the fact that we came away with 2 injuries. Everything else isn't negative. It's criticism for what's happened. It's not subjective. I mean, everybody watching that game knows that Ajeti needs to score the goal, where he's 3 yards out and the ball's played to him at a good pace. He just needs to put it in the net. So if you then start talking about that, the counter is, yeah, but he's got no one else up there. Well, he does have an option up there. He's got a couple of options of people that can play through the centre, and he's not utilised them. Is it a concern for you, Lawrence, that, again, we've got a manager who seems reluctant to make changes during a game in match management?
Listen, definitely it was obvious, you know, our midfield, Roger can tumble, went at it. You know, McCarthy was okay, he was on, Sora was on, Ajeti's off the pace, and we keep persisting with it. There's got to be something different. You know, it's not working with Roger and Turnbull in the midfield. As you've said before, we don't get 90 minutes out of either of them. You might say it might have been fine margins. Listen, we're hitting the bar. Hitting the bar's not on target, is it? You know, Dundee United might their keeper sent off second half. But Dundee United should have won that at the end. I don't know how they didn't get that shot off quicker and put it in the back of the net. And you could see where we're getting stretched. You could see that our midfield wasn't doing enough. Look at the ground that Hearts was covering for them. The tackles he was putting in, the amount of times he's winning the ball.
He looked very good.
Who was doing that for us?
I know. Now, the player I think that could have been doing that for us, obviously, is apparently returning to the squad on Thursday night, Tony. And again, we put all our eggs in the basket with McGregor coming back, Kyogo coming back, Julian coming back. And again, it could well have been another point that someone wishing to address the balance or redress the balance of this argument would say, well, there's 3 pivotal players in 3 areas of the park who are going to make a massive difference. And I think they will make a massive difference. But there's no guarantee Callum McGregor will be fit on Thursday night. If he's not and McCarthy's out, then you really do have an issue, don't you? I mean, what do you do in that scenario? Sorrow starts again?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can't understand this. You're being negative. You're reacting to a result first and foremost. You're reacting to a performance. I get back to it. Manager's been brought in to win football matches. He has to discover a way to win football matches. Because 10 points from the first 7 games out of 21 as a Celtic manager, it's not good enough. I mean, for any Celtic manager.
For any Celtic manager.
Right, for any Celtic manager, it's not good enough. So, I mean, you can talk about, oh, these are too negative. If someone wants to accentuate all the positives for me today, then feel free. I'm reacting to what we sat at the top of the programme and said was a must-win game. And again, we haven't won. Went to Livingston last week, still a must-win game. We haven't won. So and you see there's a pattern here of game management where you're looking to your manager to inspire, to make the changes or to react to circumstances in order to guarantee these win or make the changes that helps you win these football matches. And so far, in the last 3 games, you've been uninspired by him and his inaction or the actions that he has taken, which haven't been good enough to win football matches. So, are you not allowed to criticise that or look at that? Or
you've got to criticise it. You've
put
got
the
to.
microscope on it, And I seen a comment there about only real Celtic fans will back the team, armchair fans will criticise them. What's all that about? I mean, I just find that, I don't know what that actually means, but we're all Celtics. Well, we want the team to win, but the manager is no exempt from criticism.
Well,
and I think now that you have to turn around and say, okay, he's some things, we have highlighted some things that he's done in the way the team has played have been very good, but a lot of it's not been really good, has it? So we are turning our microscope on that and we're having a look at it, and that's fair.
It is fair. And in this day and age of engagement and how easy it is to engage and communicate, the conversations that we are having are the same types of conversations that I would be having on a Celtic supporters bus coming home to Fife from a game. It's the same conversations you would have in the boozer after the game. And the way that we're having them, I don't think is studs up. I mean, Fuchs was definitely studs up in the first half, but we're not going in studs up here. We're making points as to what is going wrong, what could be done better. And here's a point from Gary Fitzpatrick, just coming in from YouTube. Aberdeen game could finish our season. I am so fed up, it's unbelievable. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is straight away you're going into a game at Pittodrie, which is generally one of the toughest places. And I know we've done well there in recent seasons, but generally it's a tough fixture up at Pittodrie. They're just 2 points behind us in the league. And at that point, if you don't get a win up there, and you've got to go and get a win up there, then, and I'm not going to say panic stations, but I think many, many more people will be off the way thinking, Lawrence, that this is in dire straits, this situation. Yeah,
listen, the performances can't continue. You can't keep going, everything's fine, Don't worry, no icebergs, everything's going fine here when you're not winning football games, can you? And the comment about backing the team, we backed the team during the game, but after the game, you're allowed to dissect and go, well, look, we should have tried something different. It was clear to me that Rogic and Turnbull weren't working. I think Rogic had 10-minute spell, in the second half. It was clear to me that those two weren't working. Jota and Abad had a bit of joy. First half, Jota, second half as well, Abad had fell out. You go, we'll move Abad in. Tony Ralston's got some injury. He was up and down that line non-stop.
Yeah.
You're going, so why not go 3-5-2? Why not put 2 players in the box? We need to change something. It was clear it wasn't working for us. And Tony said, well, take a Yeti off, put Abad up front, keep 4-3-3. But whatever it is, you had to change something. When something's not working and it's quite clear it's not working, you go, we really need to change something here.
The big thing with David Turnbull, and I'm a big fan of him, Tony, but if you were to list the 2 main attributes that he has as a footballer, one of the ones that springs to mind is his long-range efforts, the other one is his passing ability. The minute he's knackered, his distribution goes out the window and he starts losing the ball. So he becomes really ineffective at around the 65, 70-minute mark. And when he's already having a fairly bad game or, a below-average game for his standards, then coupled by the fact that Tommy Roderick's not having his best day, and they both finished the 94 minutes. You've got to make a change at that point.
Yeah, I mean that defies belief that all three of those players finished the game. Roderick, Turnbull, Ajeti. Because it doesn't matter who you're looking at the bench. Those were your three candidates for coming off the park. And you and I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And if the manager can't see that, then that's pretty concerning. It's concerning me. We're not talking about going studs up or knee high on the manager. We seem to be saying the same three things, or the same thing, after the last three games. You have to react to the situation round about you as it's unfolding. We had a 2-0 lead in Spain, ended up losing 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we didn't know how to protect what we had. You go to Livingston and the pitch was always going to play its part, but I'm not blaming the pitch, but you couldn't break the bottom of the league team down. That's, granted, we're missing players, keep getting back to it, we're missing players. And then today, you go 1-0 up, lose a goal within 2 minutes, and then you can't break them down. And I know we hit the bar 3 times, and I get all that, and people will say, we attacked. Yeah, we did attack, but we didn't win the game.
Mm-hmm.
The manager's goal is to win the game. Always.
As much as we're missing players, we've still got 11 in the park. Livingston were in about. They've had bigger changes than us. So we've still got 11 players in the park. We've still got options in the bench.
I know that. That's what I'm saying.
That second half,
you've still got one off. If one of the biggest squads, you're in the top 2 in terms of personnel. If you want to look at the squad and numbers, I know we're 2 down from last season, but you've still got far more options than virtually every other team.
Every Celtic player will walk into a Livingston team. Fact, right? That's a fact. So, and most of them would walk into that Dundee United team. I'm talking about starting 11s last week and today. So we have a strong team. We have a strong squad of players. Granted, it's weakened because we've got players out. We know that, but I keep saying it. We can't keep bringing that up as an excuse. The players are injured. They're available when they're available. You play in the here and the now, and in the here and the now, since the start of the season, we've dropped 11 points from 7 league games. Get back to it. It's not good enough. It's unacceptable for any Celtic manager. So Ange has to, we have to turn around and say, right, you're contributing to this because in games, your game management isn't great. You're adapting to circumstances, or the way you see things. We're putting that under scrutiny, and I think it's fair comment.
And we'll continue to do it. Yeah, it's a full-time reaction. I don't think that often, and by the way, we've done these full-time reactions after 4-1 drubbings at the hands of Rangers, and we've managed to keep it as balanced as possible. The 3 final points I want to raise. The first one, Tony, going back to the point that, see in years to come, there'll be absolutely no asterisk to say, but Kyogo was injured and McGregor and et cetera, et cetera. That does not exist. It didn't exist for John Barnes when Henrik Larsson broke his leg. It didn't exist for Tommy Burns where there was a delayed registration for George Cadet. And it didn't happen for Venglos when Marco Viduka fled the country. And these things affected those managers and affected the outcome of those seasons.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely no caveat. Failure is failure, and it's there's no other way to look upon it. Nobody will remember the fact that the least amount of games James Forrest has ever played in a season since breaking through was last season when we lost the 10. I mean, the fact is you lost the 10, and that's the bottom line of it. James Forrest was a massive loss last season, but that doesn't get Neil Lennon out of jail. And this is the big point you're making, Tony. Secondly, I've watched a performance there, and yes, whenever you compare players, people call you a mug. I see a lot of David Ginola in Jota. The way he plays the game, the cultured manner in which he plays it, the maze he runs, the fact that he can do it, 5 yards from his own touchline, 5 yards from the opposition's touchline, Tony. He's a special, special talent. But my biggest concern, and it's coming through here from Hunnermatt or Hunnermatt, Jota will be away back home 1st of January. Now, maybe not on the 1st of January, but we've got an option to buy this player. And you've got to ask yourself, why would he want to come?
Well, you've still got, I mean, let's be realistic. You've still got a lot of time to turn this round. That's the one thing we do have on our side. It's going to have to turn around pretty quickly, isn't it? You know, and as I say today, a flair player like Jota, some people think that these guys are luxury players, but Jota wanted to win that game today. Jota tried everything in his armoury to win that game today.
Yep.
You know, he did. You know, Ralston the same, as Lawrence rightfully pointed out. But those two apart, I mean, I'm exempting the defence because they took care of more or less everything that came to them. You know, when they're under real pressure per se. But, you know, Jota was the only one from middle to front who gave you anything like a shift. And I mean a real shift, who stood up to the plate, who kind of grabbed it by the scruff of the neck and wanted it. No, not many others did. And he needed help. Can't go hiding in these moments. You've got to rise, step up to the plate. You know, and as you say, you looked at your substitutes bench and you took any Roderick, Turnbull, Ajeti off, keeping back to it. That's your middle to front, more or less, isn't it?
This time last year, Tony, 7 games in, you'll remember we beat Livingston 3-2. They got a late goal, and then in actual fact, they almost scored an equaliser in the last minute. That was our 7th game of the season, and we amassed 19 points from those 7 games. We were sitting joint top with Rangers. So you can compare and contrast, because there's one thing's for sure, I don't think Rangers this season are going to have the same season as they did last year, but they're going to grind out results like they did yesterday, and they're not going to be dropping as many points as we are currently. So that change, talking about time, that change has to happen. And it actually had to happen today. We said that at the beginning of the game. We go into our Europa League group stages game, which I will enjoy with yourself, Tony. We're going to have to get somebody else to sit in the hot seat. But we will definitely be covering that game, as we always do, on a Celtic State of Mind. I'd just like to thank everybody for getting involved today. There's been over 3,000 live viewers post-match today, which is quite astonishing when you consider that the first ACSOM Bulletin got 97 views on YouTube. So thank you all for tuning in. And you're tuning in on Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, and elsewhere. Facebook, Twitter, that's the other one. So thanks everyone for getting involved. We really appreciate your support. Even when the team's not doing so well, we can all vent together. And all that's left for me to say is Tony Haggerty and Lawrence Connolly, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.